Sometimes in war, there are stories so bizarre and out of place that they seem like a work of fiction more so than anything else. This was the case in December of 1941, where after bombing Pearl Harbor and his plane being badly damaged, a Japanese pilot named Shigenori Nishikaishi crash landed on Hawaii's smallest main island of Niihau and ended up starting a rebellion to take over the island alongside 3 civilians who had defected and sympathized with the pilot. As soon as his battle-damaged aircraft breached the yellow sand of Niihau, he was greeted by a contingency of native Hawaiians who had not yet heard the news of Pearl Harbor due to poor radio communications at the time. In traditional Hawaiian hospitality, they greeted the pilot warmly. However, one native named Hawila Keliano had been reading recent news and noticed that American and Japanese relations were tense, which led him to taking the pilot's pistol and his papers before the day's pilot could react. As night turned to day, and after throwing a party for the downed Japanese pilot, the 3 only Japanese-speaking Americans of the island were called in to help translate what Nishikaishi was saying, as he knew limited amounts of English. The first translator, Ishimatsu Shintani, was of course of Japanese ancestry, and after listening to what the pilot had to say, he abruptly departed without explanation, leaving the natives confused. They then proceeded to call in the only other 2 people on the island with Japanese ancestry to help translate, Yoshio and Irene Harada, who had been living on the island with the natives for over 3 years. After taking in what Nishikaishi the pilot had said, Harada decided not to translate the part of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and after the pilot expressed his need to get his papers back from Keliano, who outright refused, the Haradas decided to essentially join the Imperial Japanese Army and ally themselves with the pilot in his quest to get his papers back, take over the island, and then ultimately escape. Shintai, the first Japanese translator, also changed his allegiance, and at 4 PM on December 12th, he approached Keliano with $200 in cash, attempting to buy back the papers, and keep in mind, this was a huge sum of cash for the natives as well. That said, however, Keliano still refused, and Shintai angrily walked off, saying that there would be trouble if the papers were not returned. Without waiting on the news of the papers, Harada and Nishikaishi decided to take matters into their own hands and begin the uprising, attacking the lone guard posted to watch over them and locking him in a warehouse. Although there were meant to be 4 guards watching over the pilot and the Haradas, 3 of them were absent at the time, and Irene Harada played music on her phonograph to cover up the struggle happening below. Harada and Nishikaishi then acquired a shotgun and a pistol and intended to force Keliano to give up the papers. However, fatefully so, the native was in the outhouse at the time and saw the 2 prodding along a 16-year-old hostage with a gun. Unable to find him, they shifted their attention somewhere else, and Keliano took the opportunity to run as fast as his legs could take him, with the 2 conspirators yelling at him to stop and eventually trying to shoot him. The 2 enemies of the island then proceeded to torch Keliano's house as well as contact the Japanese military for assistance with the downed plane's radio. Fortunately, no Japanese frequencies picked up the call, and Keliano managed to warn the entire village and escape the island on a rowboat to seek for help. That, however, didn't stop the dynamic duo from trying to subjugate the island, with them taking multiple people captive and forcing them to search for Keliano, who had escaped earlier. Although the natives knew Keliano had escaped by a boat, they still pretended to look for him, until eventually the 2 men realized they were being deceived and threatened to kill everyone in the village if Keliano was not found. This, angering the natives, led a husband and wife duo named Ben and L.A. Kanahili to pounce on the fatigued and discouraged men. The pilot, able to get his pistol out in time, shot Ben a total of 3 times. However, this didn't stop the man, who with immense strength picked up Nishikaishi and hurled him into a stone wall, then proceeding to slit his throat and his wife Ella bashing his head in with a rock. Harada, now by himself, armed with a shotgun and sticking to his ancestral roots, decided to shoot himself instead of taking on the entire village, marking the end of the Niihau incident. The next day, on December 14th, Keliano returned with military authorities, and both the surviving Japanese Americans, Irene Harada and Ishimatsu Shintani, were taken into custody, with Irene being sentenced to 31 months in prison and Shintani sent to an internment camp for the rest of the war. Ben Kanaele was placed in hospital for recovery and returned to normal soon after the incident, thus putting an end to one of the weirdest battles of World War II. So as per usual guys, let me know your thoughts on this weird battle in the comments section below. It's honestly one of the weirdest ones I've read, and I found it very interesting. Let me know if you do as well. And just before you go, if you are enjoying the channel's content and you like the unknown stories of World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War, then please do check out our Patreon. We do get demonetized heavily on this channel, and we do also have big plans for the Patreon, so checking that out would be a great help, and donating would be even more of a greater help. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you learned something new.